Lieutenant Kara Miles had trained for war zones, not laboratories. As a decorated special operative in Earth's Interstellar Defense Force, she'd survived black hole proximity missions, zero-G boarding actions, and engagements with species that fed off neural signals. But nothing prepared her for the cold logic of the Zell Consortium. It happened during a routine recon mission near the edge of a neutral zone. Deep space claimed by no civilization, patrolled by few. Her ship's systems had gone haywire, as if attacked by a force that didn't want to be seen. She'd awoken not in a brig or battlefield, but on a sterile platform beneath surgical lights. The Xel were not conquerors or warriors. They were scientists, brilliant, clinical, and utterly detached. A collective of alien minds bound by the belief that knowledge was the highest form of dominion. Humanity, new to the galactic stage, had become their latest fascination. And Kara, with her elite training and psychological complexity, was the perfect subject. To the Zell, she wasn't a prisoner, she was a puzzle. Over the next several cycles, Kara was subjected to methodical, relentless testing. Her cell had no visible exits, but the walls reconfigured with every shift, adapting to the needs of the next trial. One test exposed her to crushing gravitational pressures, pushing her body to near bone-breaking thresholds. Another immersed her in environments mimicking desert, ocean, and tundra worlds, sometimes within a single day. Electrochemical scans were performed while she was forced to perform complex motor tasks, all while deprived of sleep. But what disturbed Kara the most weren't the physical tests. It was the observers. The Zell monitored her, not like guards, but like scholars observing a rare creature. Their long, segmented limbs moved with eerie precision, their voices always soft, unemotional, and maddeningly polite. They never acknowledged her pain or fatigue, only her performance metrics. Their leader, a particularly inquisitive Zell named Dr. Eriks, was fascinated by Kara's responses to stress. The human subject exhibits anomalous resistance to panic, he observed once. Even when subjected to neural flame simulations, the limbic system spikes but does not collapse. Remarkable. To Kara, it was psychological warfare. Every test, every probe chipped away at her sense of control, but not her will. She began to understand the rhythm of their routines, when the walls shifted, when the gravity spiked, when the observers disengaged their fields. She noticed patterns in the sound of their footsteps, the delay in environmental changes, and the way Dr. Eriks always paused a moment too long before initiating psychic scans. She let them think she was starting to crack. By the third week, she began subtly altering her behavior, reacting just a little more slowly, answering questions with slightly illogical responses. She wanted them to believe she was breaking, to push for a more invasive test, the kind that would let her get closer to the source of their technology. Her opportunity was coming. At the end of one long cycle, Kara dropped to her knees during a pain-tolerance simulation, convulsing as her vitals spiked. She screamed, not from agony, but from control. In the control room, alarms flared. Dr. Eriks gave the order. Initiate direct neural interface. Exactly what Kara had been waiting. 4 Kara Miles had baited the XL perfectly. As she'd hoped, the apparent breakdown triggered their next phase, a direct neural interface. The XL had grown increasingly frustrated by their inability to understand how her mind functioned. She endured extremes that should have broken any sentient being. Yet she remained intact. Curious, defiant. It defied all their models. Dr. Eriks believed their mistake had been trying to observe from the outside. Now, he would go inside her mind and see firsthand what made humans so maddeningly durable. They strapped Kara to the neural induction frame, a curved arc of polished alloy, lined with shimmering filaments. Xel technology was elegant. No wires or scalpels, just resonant fields and nanoscopic probes that mapped brain activity in real time. They prided themselves on being able to catalog the entire neural matrix of a species in minutes. But when they activated the scanner, something went wrong. At first, the instrument simply showed noise, not resistance, just static, randomness, a haze of contradictory signals. Dr. Eriks thought the machinery was malfunctioning. He recalibrated, increased the power. That's when Kara struck. Not physically, yet, but mentally. She didn't fight the probe, she embraced it. She fed it memories out of order. A childhood dog, a battlefield scream, laughter during a snowstorm, an ancient earth song she barely remembered. Her mind flooded the interface with emotional volatility. Grief interwoven with joy, trauma tangled, with love, rage, and compassion colliding in rapid bursts. The Zell systems couldn't compartmentalize it. They were used to linear thought, tidy emotional structures, species whose minds could be cleanly mapped. Kara's brain was a storm. Worse, she knew what they were looking for: patterns, weak spots, core fears, and she made sure to cloak them in illusions and noise. She imagined herself talking to her sister back on Earth, argued with a lover who didn't exist, revisited training simulations from years ago, all while keeping her breathing steady and her body still. To the Excel, it appeared her mind was fraying. In truth, she was creating a narrative labyrinth, a psychological decoy. Outside the lab chamber, technicians panicked. "Her prefrontal cortex is desynchronizing," one shouted. Another pointed to the screen. "Memory anchors are non-localized. We can't parse the stream." Dr. Eriks leaned in, his usually calm voice edged with something close to awe. "She's controlling it," he muttered. "She's shaping her own scan." He was right. Kara had realized something fundamental. The Zell didn't understand human minds because they didn't feel. Their entire civilization was built on observation, not experience. They cataloged emotions as data points, but they had never known love, grief, or stubborn, irrational hope. Kara wielded those like weapons. By the time they disconnected the neural interface, their systems were overheating, and Kara's vitals had stabilized. Too perfectly. Dr. Eriks stared at her through the containment glass, for once at a loss. Back. In her cell, Kara smiled faintly, not because she had fooled them, but because she had learned more than they realized. The neural interface was a two-way window. She had seen their control systems, the lab's layout, the fact that their fail-safes required multi-point access. They had come to unravel her limits, but now she had mapped theirs. They thought she was still under observation. That was their first mistake. Kara Miles had spent weeks allowing the alien scientists of the Zell Consortium to think they were in control. In truth, she had used every scan, every test, and every invasive procedure to study them. Every restraint mechanism, every subsystem she was exposed to, she had memorized and mentally reconstructed it all. Now it was time to act. She initiated her escape during what the Excel called a baseline restoration cycle, a rest period when subjects were allowed to recover in low-stimulus environments. It was the only time the containment walls softened into a more permeable state, enabling atmospheric modulation. It was also the one window where their monitoring routines were semi-automated rather than live. Kara exploited an overlooked vulnerability. In one of the test harnesses, a molecular interface node used during neural stimulation trials. With a sharpened sliver of embedded metal she'd palmed days ago, she shorted the node's failsafe, creating a localized magnetic feedback loop. When it activated, it forced a system-wide recalibration, one the lab hadn't scheduled. That created the breach. As the lights flickered and gravity pulsed unevenly through the corridor outside her cell, Kara slipped free of her restraints. The guards, 3 drone-like Zell automatons, responded sluggishly, their motion algorithms compromised by the sensor noise she'd just triggered. With fluid, brutal efficiency, she dismantled the first drone, using its own gravitic limb to crush the second. The third tried to emit a neural shock pulse, but Kara had already thrown a piece of shattered paneling into its emitter core. The facility plunged into emergency lockdown. But Kara wasn't running blindly. She had a plan. She made her way to the experimentation ring, where the scientists had spent weeks torturing her with their observations. One by one, she turned their own tools against them. In Dr. Eriks's lab, she overrode the gravity matrix and increased it to 4x baseline. forcing him to collapse under his own weight, while she calmly stripped the interface node from his console. In another chamber, she isolated a group of Zell researchers and reversed their psychic feedback field, forcing them into a feedback loop of their own dispassionate thoughts, trapped in endless cycles of pure logic, unable to comprehend the chaos around them. Kara didn't kill them. That wasn't the mission. She made them feel vulnerable. For once, they were the test subjects. As alarms shrieked across the station and automated defense systems scrambled to engage, Kara made her way to the core command module. She triggered a cascading systems crash, overriding their control protocols with a recursive loop she'd embedded via the interface earlier. The entire facility buckled into a controlled implosion lockdown. Before leaving, she accessed the broadcast hub and sent out a coded transmission to Earth's defense fleet. Her coordinates, threat assessment, and one short message. Subject has turned control group. Extraction advised. With the last functioning escape pod, Kara launched into orbit. Below her, the once pristine lab twisted into chaos. Its captors, still alive but now helplessly trapped in their own experiments. She watched in silence, not with vengeance but with purpose. They had tried to define her limits. Now they would live inside theirs. As the escape pod carried Kara miles away from the Zell research station, she stared down at the orbiting facility, now in complete lockdown. It spun slowly, powerless, sealed by protocols Kara herself had hijacked using their own interface systems. Within its corridors, the scientists who had poked, prodded, and analyzed her now faced a new reality. One where they were the controlled subjects, trapped, powerless. Confused, she wasn't interested in revenge. She wanted transformation. The Zell had long believed themselves intellectually superior to every species they encountered. Their knowledge was clinical, detached, and cold, measured in data sets, not empathy. To them, humans were volatile anomalies, to be dissected, catalogued, and filed away as another curiosity of galactic evolution. But Kara had shown them something they had never accounted for: adaptability fueled by emotion, strategy driven by experience, and survival guided not by logic, but will. As the escape pod reached safe distance, Kara accessed its long-range transmitter and interfaced with the consortium's internal communications relay, a channel they assumed was inaccessible to lesser species. Using fragments of their own code structure, which she had memorized during neural testing, she forced a connection to the Central Excel Council. The screen lit up with flickering holograms, tall, translucent figures with fractal patterns swirling. Across their elongated heads, they looked down on her, visibly confused, mildly alarmed, and entirely unprepared. Kara didn't waste words. "This is Lieutenant Kara Miles of the Interstellar Defense Force. You captured me. You studied me. You tried to find what made humans different. You failed." She let the silence hang, her voice cool and measured. "Now you'll learn it the hard way. You don't understand us because you don't feel. You think fear is weakness. You think pain defines limits, but for us, fear fuels courage, pain builds strength, and limits, we break them." One of the Zell figures opened its mouth to speak, but she cut the feed. Before the connection closed, she uploaded a secure data package, a full diagnostic of their facility's vulnerabilities, the flaws in their containment systems, and how easily their protocols had been reversed. She left instructions embedded in the code, not for the Zell but for Earth's command. Lessons learned, weaknesses identified, potential assets reclaimed. A treasure trove of information gathered not through observation, but lived experience. Within minutes, a retrieval ship from Earth's fleet warped into the system. The pod docked with the cruiser ESS Resolute, and Kara emerged to a stunned crew. She looked gaunt, scarred, and exhausted, but unbroken. During debrief, she walked the command staff through everything, test by test, system by system, vulnerability by vulnerability. The data she recovered would influence years of tactical and technological development, particularly in countering species that relied on pure intellect over experience. Kara's report closed with one line. They tested for the boundaries of human resilience. They never imagined we didn't have any. Back in orbit, the crippled Zell station floated in silence, its perfect laboratory now a sealed tomb of arrogance. The Zell had sought to define humanity's limits. Instead, Kara had redefined theirs.